All right, welcome everyone. On behalf of Mental Health Foundation Australia and our chairperson, Mr. Vasan Srinivasan, I would like to welcome and thank each and every one of you for attending our Mental Wellbeing during COVID-19 interactive webinar during National Mental Health Month 2020. We begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land from which we all are meeting on today. In particular, I want to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, who are the traditional owners of the land from which I'm meeting you today. And I likewise encourage everyone to take a moment to reflect on whose land you are on today. We pay our respects to their elders past, present, and emerging, and extend this same respect to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people who may be joining us here today. I would like to also acknowledge how difficult this year has been for everyone in the face of COVID-19 and the amount of pressure this has put on everyone's mental well-being. It is so important that we talk about mental health and the impacts of isolation, losing employment, losing loved ones, and illness on our mental well-being together, so that way we can learn how to help one another and be resilient during these troubling times. During this event, we will not only be hearing from guest speakers on their recommendations for how we deal with this pressure, but this is also a social and interactive event where we will prompt open and honest conversation about mental well-being and have some fun along the way. Your one-on-one conversations with each other will not be recorded or broadcasted in any way, and they will remain completely private. I do ask, however, that you don't share anything that you wish not to be shared with others, either in the chat or in the breakout sessions. And additionally, during the main spaces, unless you are comfortable with your face being shown, if you could please turn off your cameras and microphones for the rest of the time, that would be greatly appreciated. I would now like to introduce our primary guest speaker for this event, Dariel Arsh. But before I do this, let's watch this short video from our sponsors, Australian Unity.
The way I felt at the time was about everything.
Sorry, I don't know why that.
Everything was pointless. I wasn't enjoying art. I wasn't enjoying getting under the bonnet of the car. I wasn't enjoying people because I was about as low as you could go at that point. I got a cold call letter, and it looked a little different to a lot of the other letters you normally get. It was a good letter. It had an offer of helping people to make them feel better. So I embraced this Mind Step program, and it just felt terrific to know that there was somebody else there apart from family, apart from friends, who was thinking about me, and I looked forward to the sessions we had. I feel so much more positive today than 2 years ago in the middle of that deep, deep depression. The Mind Step program was tremendously significant in getting me there.
Perfect. Now I'll move on to the next slides shortly. We've had some troubles with that, so I will just change the share screen again. Okay, perfect. So for everyone who's just joined, welcome to this session. If you could please keep your cameras and microphones off during the main space, but then when we go into the breakout rooms, which will just be very briefly, Please feel free to unmute yourself and turn on your camera then. We will not be recording any of that, but please don't share anything that you wish not to be shared with anyone in this call or anyone else present. Okay, so I would now like to introduce our guest speaker for the event, Darielle Ash. She has had over 10 years of experience within the mental health and community services industries. As a certified life coach, she aims to empower individuals to understand just how much control they have over how they take care of themselves. Darielle is a firm believer that we cannot necessarily control external factors, events, or people in life. However, we have so much control over how we process, react to, and learn from these things. Darielle will be discussing tips and tools to empower you to get back to feeling in control and ready to tackle life's challenges. Please welcome Darielle.
Thank you so much, Andeli. Hi, everyone. It's so strange talking via webinar, via Zoom. I'm so used to seeing people's faces when I'm talking to them. So please forgive me if I am a little bit, I don't know, a bit confused because I can't see your reactions. But as Andeli said, so my name is Darielle and I am a certified life coach, but I also have a psychology degree. So I have a background in psychology, and it is definitely my jam to be talking to people about how it is that they can take control over how they feel about themselves, how they feel about life, because when it comes down to it, we do have so much more control over all of those aspects than we know. So I do have some slides that Andeli's going to get up, which is awesome.
Perfect, here we are.
Awesome. So I do know that obviously I'm over here in WA and our situation is a little bit different to the rest of Australia. I do know that everyone's going through their own challenges right now and they might look different to the person next to you. It is a difficult time. 2020 is definitely tough, and it's tough for a multitude of reasons, but one of them being so isolated and distant from your loved ones, or not having as many opportunities to be engaging socially with people. So yeah, I thought, why wouldn't I talk about that feeling of overwhelmingness and the feelings of overwhelm that we get when we can't necessarily control the environment that we're in. So, and again, sorry, please excuse my my voice. I've actually got terrible hay fever. The beautiful weather here in WA is actually a fickle thing because I've got some great hay fever today. So I thought I would chat a little bit about emotions in general. This is totally something that I'm passionate about, because when we don't necessarily understand emotions or how we feel them or how we should be feeling them and what we should be feeling, it's very difficult to tackle them. So I wanted to start off just by prefacing all of this and saying that feeling overwhelmed, stressed, anxious, deflated is not abnormal. So feeling your emotions is not an abnormal thing. It makes you a human. I think a lot of us get quite overwhelmed when our emotions come to the surface and we're not entirely sure that we want to be expressing them in front of other people, and we're not entirely sure that that is going to make us look like a strong human being. There is a lot of association when it comes to displaying your emotions and weakness. So a lot of people see that as a sign of weakness if you're talking about your feelings or you're expressing that you've got something going on for you, when really you being aware of your emotions is a superpower because not everyone has the ability to do it. So I kind of wanted to start this off just by letting you guys know that feeling your emotions and expressing them doesn't make you less of an amazing human being. It just makes you a human being. In addition to that, it's only when feeling our emotions becomes such a big thing that it stops us from doing our day-to-day tasks. So when it comes to, say you've got something hectic going on in your life and it is something that you're dealing with, you're feeling it, you're feeling the heavy emotions, but you're actually allowing those feelings to stop you from living your life. So you're not getting out of bed in the morning. You're not able to motivate yourself to clean the house. You're not able to, I don't know, like even catch up with friends via Zoom because you're in a really bad mental state. I think when it comes down to it, yes, let's feel our emotions, let's sit with them, let's understand them, but let's not let them take control, because at the end of the day, we are the only ones who are in control of our emotions. Unfortunately, there's some horrible stuff happening in the world right now, and we can't necessarily control that. But what we can control is the way that we feel about it, and we can control the way that we process it, and then the way that we take care of ourselves as well. I think that's a really important little tool and mindset to have. So having emotions, expressing those emotions and learning from those emotions really are just a part of being a human being. Please don't be fearful of them. When we start to become fearful of our emotions, we give them a lot more power than they need to have. The ability to feel our emotions and express them makes us strong, not weak. So a person that I follow and that I'm just a huge fan of, Brene Brown. I don't know if you guys have heard of her. She's fantastic. I think she calls herself a vulnerability coach and a vulnerability and shame coach. She's incredible. But she talks about vulnerability as strength, and the ability to speak openly about your feelings as a strength rather than a weakness. And I really think it is that, because a lot of people these days really do have issues expressing themselves. And if you're one of those people that are, is brave enough to step up and say, I'm feeling this because of this reason, or, I'm going through something heavy and I might need some help, that really, really is a sign of strength and not weakness, even though society might tell us otherwise. I might get you to pop over to the next slide if you can, Angeli. Thank you. So another thing that really, really inspires me is a man called Rumi. I don't actually know that I'm pronouncing that right, but he's fantastic. So he has the most beautiful poem called The Guest House. And I love referring to this poem because it really just is the perfect depiction of how we should treat ourselves and our emotions. So the quote you can see is, "This being human is a guest house." I thought that was a grammatical error. It's not. It's him being very smart with his words. Every morning, a new arrival, a joy, a depression, meanness, some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all. So when he speaks about us being a guest house, or our bodies, or us as vessels being a guest house, he is referring to welcoming our emotions in as though they are our guests. And I love this concept because a lot of people are very fearful of letting their emotions in and getting to know their emotions. But if you think about it as you being a guest house, or you being a host, and welcoming an emotion in, getting them to come into your living room, getting them to sit down, being a gracious host, getting to know them a little bit, asking them why they're there, and then deciding whether you would like them to stay or not. Because that's something that you would do with a guest in your house. You can kind of decide whether, this is a useful emotion for me to keep around for a little while, or decide that it is not a useful emotion, and that it is an emotion that you would potentially like to ask to politely leave. It is a phenomenal poem. Yes. Okay. Sorry. I can just see a couple of chats coming through. That's awesome. So what I will do, I'll at the end of all of this, end of this session, and towards the end, we will definitely be doing questions and answers. So when I talk about, yes, welcoming people into your house as though they are guests, it is really, really, really an important thing, because if we ignore our guests, if we don't allow them to come in, if we're rude to them and don't get to know them, we're being an ungracious host. I don't know if that's a word, but we're not being good hosts. And when we're not being good hosts, we're not getting to know people and we're not getting to know our emotions. That is, I think, a little bit of a trick that I've learned over the years is to acknowledge your emotions and get to know them. As human beings, we are fearful of what we do not know. Right? So we're fearful of things that we know nothing about. So a lot of people are fearful of their emotions because they don't spend enough time with them. So the more you welcome those emotions in, get to know them, decide whether you would like them to stick around or not, the better off you will be for it. Fantastic. So I've got just a little question here. So we can happily share, I'm sure, our my slides show notes with you all. That's totally doable. Okay, so processing our emotions, that's a really important part of this whole process. Processing our emotions is exactly that. It is a process. So it requires you to acknowledge them and not avoid them. So just like I've been saying, being a gracious host and acknowledging your guests as they come in, that is a really, really important step. Without that step, we're kind of going in blind and we don't necessarily understand what we're dealing with. But then we're also not giving ourselves the opportunity to overcome difficult emotions. If we don't acknowledge them, we're not putting ourselves in a position to overcome them. All right, thanks, Sandeli. We can go to the next one. So guys, expressing ourselves. So this is another very, very important part of getting through difficult times is expressing yourself. Expressing yourself looks very different to everybody. For some people, expressing yourself is crying and getting it out in that way. For other people, it's screaming. That's definitely something that the holistic space is using a whole lot more. A lot of kind of holistic practitioners are using primal screaming as an emotion release, and I love it. I'm super into it. It's just that huge, big release of heavy stuff in a really physical way that helps your body to understand that you've gotten rid of something. And so that's what expressing your emotions is. So crying, screaming, whatever it is that you do, it is such an important part of processing and dealing with your emotions. If you're not able to express them, I like to think of it as a fun analogy, like I don't know, we're filling up a water bottle or something with a whole bunch of sand, and we're constantly filling it up. And then we get to the top and we're like, okay, something bad has happened and I need to put a little bit more sand in my water bottle, but it won't fit. What am I going to need to do? I'm going to have to pour some out, and I'm probably going to have to pour a lot out because I can't control how much sand I'm pouring out. But it gets to a point where something tiny, something little will happen, and we'll have a huge, big emotional reaction to it, and we won't understand why. And we'll generally get to the conclusion a lot later on, but it'll be that we haven't expressed ourselves. And let's be honest, it is a lot easier for women to express themselves than men, just because society says that it's okay. But I know a lot of men that I work with that have a real big issue with expressing themselves on a regular basis and crying and talking about their feelings. And without doing that, they're doing themselves like a disservice. And you know what? It really does look different to everyone. It doesn't need to be a cry or a scream. It can be talking to your mate about something that's going on for you. That is a form of expressing your emotions as well. If we're not getting rid of that and we're not exerting it, we're not expressing it, it's going to stay bottled up inside of us, and something's going to happen and we're going to have a huge emotional reaction to it, and we're not going to understand why. So really, I can't emphasize this enough, but expressing yourself on a regular basis is really, really important. So yeah, it can be talking to someone you trust, crying, screaming. A great tip and a tool that I use is writing things down. We're sometimes not in the environment where it's okay to cry. Maybe we're at work and it's it would be inappropriate in that environment. Maybe it's not okay to let out a giant scream in the workplace. So writing things down is very, very therapeutic. If you think of it in a really physical way, you're expressing something. You're letting it leave your body by writing it down on a piece of paper. And after you've done that, you can do whatever you want with that piece of paper. You can burn it, you can rip it up, you can do whatever you feel, but you writing something down is almost like telling a mate about it. It's expressing it, and then it is getting rid of that and throwing it in the bin and deciding that that's the way that you've dealt with that emotion. It's definitely something that I use on a regular basis. And I actually encourage kids to do that a lot as well. Especially in school, they find it very difficult to express their emotions because of fear of judgment. I highly encourage them to write stuff down, rip it up, chuck it in the bin, and they get like this kind of sense of power. It's like, oh, I've just expressed something and I'm feeling pretty strong and pretty good about myself now. Yeah, when we express ourselves, our emotions are physically leaving our bodies. It might sound a little bit woo-woo, it might sound a bit spiritual to you, but that's exactly what's happening. And I'm sure you guys all know when you're talking to a mate of yours and you've just like had a rough day and you're expressing how rough your day was and you're venting and you're letting all of that out. After that conversation, you almost feel lighter and you feel like there's not as much weighing you down. And that's what we want. We want you to do that on a very regular basis so that when something happens, you don't have all of this pent up stuff that you haven't dealt with. And let's be honest, if we're going to relate this to the current situation happening in the world right now, it is so important that we're talking about how hard stuff is, because each day there's more information that comes in that's scary and is overwhelming and is hectic. So it is so important that we're speaking to someone about it or expressing it somehow, and doing it on a regular basis just because of the current situation that we're in. And we don't know, tomorrow could bring some more bad news. So take care of yourself and make sure you're in a position where you can, be strong enough and get through more hectic news. And ways that we do that is, supporting ourselves and asking for support from others. I think that's really important as well. We can go on to the next one. Thanks, Nandeli. Awesome. So I'll get onto this really quickly. I've just got my thing covering there. There we go. So my tips to deal with the overwhelming situations that are happening in the world right now, as I mentioned before about 100 times, is express yourself on a regular basis. It's just important. And it can be in any way that you feel comfortable with. The second one is taking breaks and doing it often. I don't know what your situation is, if you're working from home, if you're still working in an office, whatever it is, if you're not working and you're at home doing the same thing on a regular basis, make sure that you take breaks from the things that you are doing most of the time, and schedule in your breaks and make sure that you are taking care of yourself. And my favorite thing to do, and it might sound a bit abnormal, but I'm all about that, is lying on the floor in absolute silence and just lying there for about 5 minutes. I'll set a timer on my phone, and that complete disconnection from everything that's going on in the world, the disconnection from relationships with people, the reconnection with yourself. So just completely being by yourself, doing nothing, is something that is so important. And you'll maybe find when doing that, a lot of stuff will come to the surface, and you might get a little bit emotional because you're actually processing what's going on in the world right now, but that's okay. It's obviously something that you need. Disconnecting is super important. Okay, the other one, get outside whenever you can, if it is safe to do so. Obviously, there's different rules and restrictions all over Australia, but if you do have the opportunity and you're in the position to do so, being outside is good for you. It's good for you for a multitude of reasons. Number one, sunshine is good for our mental health. And it's good for our bodies. We need some vitamin D. In addition to that, just like breathing in fresh air and moving your body is so important. And it just makes the world of difference. Even though it might not feel like it at the time, you'll come back from like a little walk around the block and you'll feel refreshed. It'll definitely help. And it also just helps break up your day. You're not necessarily doing the same things day in, day out. If you're working from home, taking little breaks is almost like a little adventure, and going for a little walk around the block is a little adventure for you. That's really important. So The next one is set small achievable goals to get things done. I'm all about goal setting, but in a very achievable way. So if you've got something around the house that needs doing, if you've got some spare time, make sure you set some goals and give yourself a little bit of structure. Make sure they are small achievable goals. So what I mean by that is, instead of thinking, okay, I'm going to paint the whole house in the next day, it's not realistic, it's overwhelming. Instead, your goal could be, I'm going to paint this one wall today and I'm going to feel really good about it when I'm done. So make sure that anything that you are doing, don't do it in a big way, do it in small achievable ways. There's nothing more rewarding than ticking something off a to-do list. So making your to-do list and ticking stuff off in a small achievable way is really important. Monitor how much information you're consuming. This is a really big one. I know that a lot of us are watching the news on a very regular basis. We're scrolling through social media and seeing a whole bunch of stuff about COVID and about life and the world and what's happening in America politically. There's so much stuff going on. Taking in what you need to take in and making sure that you're not scrolling or you're not watching TV too much to a point where it's affecting your mental health. I know when in the thick of it here in WA, like when we were in our little lockdown, I remember I was watching so much television and all over the news. It was all COVID related. My social media feed was all COVID related. There were so many situations in which I was exposed to this information about COVID, and it just became too much. And I started monitoring how much information I was consuming. So I spent less time on my phone. I took breaks from my phone. I took breaks from the television and just listened to music instead. So making sure that you're not being overwhelmed by how much information is coming into your brain, because it can be a lot. The next one is, if you're missing structure, recreate it by scheduling your week. This is my favorite thing to do. I love scheduling my weeks. So if you've got a cute little planner or you want to make your own, scheduling your week in like on a Sunday is something that is going to give you a lot more purpose and structure. I took a little bit of a break from working during the March, April section of this pandemic. And I definitely needed that. That was definitely something that worked for me. So I'd sit down on a Sunday and I'd go through what my week was looking like. And I'd schedule in things, obviously, that I needed to get done, work-related things. But in addition to that, I would be scheduling in self-care time, and I'd be scheduling in little breaks, and I'd be scheduling in my exercise. There's nothing better than feeling like you're in control when you're scheduling your week, because you get this sense of, okay, this is what I'm doing this week. This is what I'm going to get done. I feel like I have a sense of purpose. I feel like, I'm going to smash this week. I'm going to do real good things this week because it's in front of me and I wrote it down. And that's the beauty of scheduling and writing things down, is that it's written down there. So if you don't do it, you're going to feel a bit bad. So it's kind of like an accountability thing. So writing things down is super, super important when it comes to wanting to get things done. The other one I've got here, this one is so, so important, is moving your body. I know that a lot of us get into headspaces where we're like, well, we can't leave the house. We can't do this. We can't do that. I'm going to lay on the couch and watch Netflix for 8 hours. As much as, that is lots of fun, it is so important that we're moving our bodies on a regular basis, because your body is used to moving. It is a machine that requires movement to be healthy. So if it's even, going online and looking up some like online workouts that you can do at home in your living room, or even just going for like a short walk if you're allowed to around the block, I highly suggest moving your body every single day. And it doesn't need to be strenuous exercise. It doesn't need to be a hectic gym class or a hectic run. It doesn't need to be high intensity. It can be as simple as moving your body, doing some stretches on your living room floor, set out a yoga mat or a towel or something on your living room floor and make sure your body is moving. There's nothing worse than getting yourself into a habit of not moving your body every day and getting into that headspace of, well, this is my life now. We don't want to be in that space. We want to be in a space where we're feeling like, okay, just because I've got restrictions does not mean that I can't move my body. Moving your body is not only good for your physical health, obviously, it'll prevent a lot of injuries. I know at the moment, if you're spending a lot of time indoors and not moving around so much, when restrictions ease and when you start to move around a lot more, you're a lot more prone to getting injuries because you haven't been moving your body. In addition to the physical side of everything and getting your blood pumping and moving, it's also just incredible for your mental health. To be exercising. We always feel better after a workout, and it's the endorphins, it's the blood circulating around our body and getting to all of our vital organs. It's definitely a mental health strategy as well as a physical strategy. And the last one, I love this. So remaining connected to friends, family, and loved ones. I know, there's physical connection is not something that is like possible for all of you guys at the moment. However, you know what? We're on Zoom right now. It's super easy to use. There are so many different apps and so many different portals to be able to speak to people online and reach out, reach out to people as well. I think even just like putting in a little bit of effort and like messaging friends as well, sending text messages, checking in, seeing how their days are going. Remain connected because it gives you like that sense of safety and support as well. There's nothing worse than feeling like you're completely isolated and disconnected from everyone. There's so many fun ways to be connecting with others through Zoom, through I think Google Hangouts was a cool thing for a while. I think people were using that. That's pretty cool. And you can do it in a big group as well. During, our little lockdown period, I put a lot of effort into making Zoom or FaceTime dates with my girlfriends. And it's something that I looked forward to. It would be like a Friday night girls' night, and we'd all be sitting on our couches with a glass of vino or a glass of whatever else, and we were catching up almost as though we were out at a pub together or we were at someone's house. There's so many ways to remain connected, and it really it's so important for our mental health, but it's also so important for your friends, and your loved ones. They might be feeling isolated as well. They might be feeling like they don't have the support that they need as well, and maybe they're too apprehensive or too scared to reach out to you. So you be that person that reaches out to them, and remain connected to everyone. Just because we can't physically be with them does not mean we're not their friends anymore, and it doesn't mean we're not family anymore. Putting effort into that is super important. I think to wrap all of this up, guys, times are tough right now, and all that I spoke, I gave you a lot of information there. So times are definitely tough. Give yourselves a break. Understand that we're going to feel some emotions when the world is a bit overwhelming. But please understand that you have so much control over what you do with those emotions, right? Just like referring back to that guest house thing, you decide whether your emotions stay or leave. Right? You decide what you do with those emotions, what you learn from them. You also decide, how you take care of yourself. You decide whether you're going to schedule in your exercise this week. You decide whether you're going to eat that healthier meal because it makes your body feel good. You decide whether you're going to reach out to a friend and remain connected. This is all within your control. As much as the outside world seems as though it's all chaotic and overwhelming, we have so much control over what goes on for us. And I would love to just leave you with that message that, you are so much more in control than you know, and there's so much support out there to be able to remind you of that. But that's about it. That's the me done, Andeli. I do have a little bit. Yeah, I've got a little bit of information there. So I am a life coach, and I run workshops, and I do online coaching. So I've just got my website there. You can just send me a little message through my website if you'd like, if you want to reach out, needing some support, even if you just like to chat. As you can tell, I'm quite a chatty person, so I'd love to chat with you guys. But thank you so much for taking the time to listen.
Thank you so much, Darielle. It was a really excellent presentation. And I'd also just like to add as well, for anyone watching, with all those tips and everything that Darielle mentioned, I know it can also be easy sometimes when you go to events like these or somewhere else and you're hearing all these things you can be doing to take care of yourself, and you sit there and you're like, well, I haven't been doing most of these things, or, you know, a few of these things are not things that I've touched in quite a while. I think it's really important to remember that regardless of what else is happening in your life, what you have or haven't been doing, your self-worth and your value inherently as a human being, that never changes. That's always there. So don't beat yourself up if you feel like, you know, I haven't been as productive during this period as I'd like to be, and people online have been that I follow, or things like that. As Darielle said, this is a tough time for everyone, and you know, we understand that it's not easy. I guess just by coming here today, you've already taken a great step in trying to take care of and protect your mental well-being. So that in itself is quite an achievement. So thank you for joining us today. If during this event, at any time, it's raised an issue that you feel like you will need further help for, or you've realized you need additional assistance or someone to talk to, we've got some helplines on the screen here. These slides will be shared with you later. A full recording of the event won't be shared, as during the breakout spaces, we will not be recording to protect people's privacy. But certainly of the sections we can share with you, we will aim to share these with you. But yeah, once again, if you do need to call anyone or reach out, please don't hesitate to call any of the support lines that are on screen at the moment, and take care during this time. So we're now going to have these breakout type sessions just shortly. So we're going to move into these breakout spaces to prompt some short conversations. Who here hasn't used breakout rooms before? Feel free to enter into the chat if this is going to be your first time using a breakout room. Basically, breakout rooms allow us to split the call temporarily into smaller groups or rooms. When you get an invitation to join a breakout room, make sure you click join. Using the breakout rooms and some preset introductory questions, you'll just get allocated into a breakout room with one other random person, and you'll be given 2.5 minutes just to discuss the prompt questions as a way of quickly getting to know someone else and have some social interaction. Normally around this time of year, one of our events as part of National Mental Health Month would be to have a barbecue where people are able to get together and talk. But obviously, due to the current pandemic, that's not something that's accessible to us all right now. And so having these quick conversations where we briefly get to know each other can help, I guess, to recreate that sense of normalcy with chatting people and with meeting people. So after 2.5 minutes, the breakout rooms will be mixed up again, and you will get to know another person shortly. The questions that you'll be discussing with a partner will just be your name or whatever you're comfortable with them calling you in that time period, and perhaps any other information you might want to briefly share, for example, your pronouns or the traditional custodians of the land where your own, and just what's something fun that you've done this past week. I will copy and paste these prompts into the chat before we go into breakout rooms. And they will also be broadcast once you've gone into breakout rooms. Before we do that, perfect. So, yep, we've got a few people who this will be their first time. And yes, you'll definitely get a copy of the slides emailed to everyone shortly. So we'll just take a quick minute whilst I copy these prompt questions into the chat for you, and then I sort out the breakout rooms. So hold on tight for a second. Then after that, I will send us all out into breakout rooms and we'll be ready for the conversations. To quickly do a quick craft activity. together. So I'll give everyone a couple minutes. If you're able to find some paper nearby that you can cut into a square of any size, it's okay. If you don't have any paper nearby and unable to do this, that's completely fine as well. We're just going to attempt making some origami quickly together. It's great to be able to do